back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys! So I am here today to talk to you about some of my favourite new authors, or new to me authors, that I discovered in the year 2018. So what I mean by new to me is not necessarily that they first brought out a book in 2018, just that I actually read them for the first time in 2018. And I actually have 15 new authors that I discovered in 2018 whose books I think I will definitely be buying more of, and certainly if they've got a backlist I want to go back and read it, and if they haven't, if they're just starting out on a series, then I want to continue it. So let me tell you a little bit about each of these authors and why I love them so much, and I'm going to just give you a quick update on them. None of them are really in order specifically, I just really enjoy all of the books that I've read by them so far in 2018. So let's get started. The first one I have to mention is JOSIAH Bancroft. This author is one I discovered because of SBFBO. Last year in 2017 he was a finalist and I really enjoyed his books, and I'm currently reading the third one in this series at the moment and loving it. This is a wacky series, it's quite out there and different to a lot of other series that are currently on the market, and it's one that I really think a lot of people would enjoy. He's got quite a steampunk style going on, it's a bit over the top, dramatic, crazy, there's a lot of opulence and excellence in his books, and I think he does an excellent job of just creating a crazy story in a very unique world, which makes it so fun to read. So I think at the moment this is his only series as far as I know, but I am currently really enjoying reading it and I highly recommend checking this series and this author out. Next up, an author who I read for the first time in 2018 is ADRIAN Tchaikovsky, and I read a couple of his books. I read Children of Time and Guns of the Dawn. I loved both of them and I thoroughly was impressed by how detailed his ideas were. He's very unique again in his approach to writing fantasy. I think he comes up with some of the weirdest, craziest ideas, but he does them very, very well. This book in particular has some very unique ideas about space and how to represent a series of people living in space in different evolutions of time. I am not surprised that this book has won Hugos and stuff. I'm also not surprised if like the future books by him will, because he has certainly made his mark on the sci-fi and fantasy genre, and he has a huge backlist actually, so I'm very excited to go back and read more of his books as time goes on. But ADRIAN Tchaikovsky is a new firm favourite of mine. Next up, another author who I actually binge read quite a few books from in this past year is John Wyndham. He writes quite sort of cosy science fiction and fantasy, if that makes sense. His books are very old worldy, they're set in kind of older time periods because they are written in older time periods, but they have a sort of cosy vibe to them. They just feel like they're the sort of read you can settle down with and you can read the whole thing in a night because they're fairly short, or you can just enjoy it as you go. His books explore some big ideas, but they do so in a very succinct way. His characters don't always fully connect with me, but I still feel like his writing is some of the most interesting in science fiction that I've read so far, and I know I'm not as well versed in sci-fi as I am fantasy, but I still think he definitely has some interesting things going on that he's kind of playing with here. So certainly recommend his books so far. I've got a couple of his still on my to be read shelf, so I'll definitely try and get to some of them in the coming year, and I'm looking forward to reading more of his stuff because he has quite a good backlog as well. Another new author I read in 2018 is Peter Newman, husband of Emma Newman, who I absolutely love. I wanted to try out his work for a while. I read The Vagrant early in 2018 and I wasn't that impressed, but then I read The Deathless, and this book completely blew me away. I loved the concepts, I loved the writing style, it was very action-packed and very intense. All of the characters were fun, there wasn't a single character that I felt was really not part of the story. They all connected really well, and it was just an impressive, really good fantasy story. So I'm certainly keen to see where he goes with this series. I don't think I'm going to necessarily finish the Vagrant series off because that one didn't quite work for me. It's a little bit more exploratory, a bit weird and wacky, whereas this series is a bit more sort of tropey, I suppose, but not predictable, very fun. I highly recommend both Emma and Peter Newman because they're both great, and I'm really happy I sort of discovered this book and gave him another try because this one was excellent. Next up I have Jessica Townsend. I'm holding up book 2 by her, but actually her first book is Nevermore. She writes this series and she writes it well. It's a kids series, but I think it will appeal to anyone. It definitely appeals to me. It's super fun, very magical, very exciting to read. You just feel like you are settling back into your childhood a bit. It does remind me of the same feeling I got when reading Harry Potter and other books like that. I just think it's a really magical series. There are a lot of really fantastic scenes and ideas in how the magic works and how very bizarre and exciting the world can be. It's just full of imagination, and I think it will be perfect for anyone who's got kids, and also just all ages, because really you don't need to be a kid to read a children's book. It can be just as fun even as an adult, and this is exactly that. Next up I have Christopher RUOCCHIO. I'm not certain that's how you say his name, but he writes Empire of Silence, this book here. This, I think, is his debut book, but it was really, really good and I really enjoyed it, so I'm very excited to see where his series goes. It's a science fiction series, as you can guess, following one main character called Hadrian Marlowe, and he is a character who is just rumoured throughout the entire land to be absolutely epic. He's kind of achieved loads of things, but this is him telling his story about how he got to where he is now and kind of giving you the lowdown on everything. It's a very chunky book, and for a debut it was very impressive, and I found myself completely hooked into the story very early on. I actually really enjoyed this, and I'm super keen to see what this author brings out next, so very happy to have discovered them this year. Next up I read my first ever Robert Jackson Bennett. It's been a while getting to him. I don't know exactly why I haven't prioritised him more, because a lot of my friends really enjoy his stuff, but I finally got to Foundryside, which is the newest book by him, and I really enjoyed it, so I'm now very keen to go back and read City of Stairs and all his other books as well. I really think he has a very interesting mind when it comes to the magic systems, and I think maybe that is also the case for City of Stairs and all of those ones. If people know, let me know, but I think it will be similar. This one has a really cool magic system. It reminded me a lot of like Mistborn and that sort of thing. Maybe a little bit of Mistborn crossed with like Emperor's Soul, both Sanderson-esque books. But I think this one has a lot to offer, and I really enjoyed the writing style in general. It felt quite easy to get into once you were into the story. So I'm hopeful that I'll like the second one in this series and also go back and read some of his previous books as well, because he has got a few. Next up I have NEAL Shusterman. I hadn't really read anything by him, although I know he's a fairly well-known name in sort of YA. And this one is Scythe, and I've also read the second one in the series, which is Thunderhead. I completely love this series. It's a YA dystopian. It's super fun. Again, it feels very easy to get into, this one. It feels like it's not a huge time investment, because although you're reading the book, it's just racing by. It's so quick, it's so fun, there's so much going on. There's like political machinations and scheming and all sorts happening at the same time, and I just think it's really beautifully put together. Both this one and the sequel, which I think is actually slightly better, are really fast-paced and enjoyable reads, and I listen to them on audio, which I thoroughly recommend as well. And I do believe he's got other books too, so I guess maybe I'll check out some of those if you guys let me know which ones are worth reading. I also discovered Andrew Rowe this year. I've read his Arcane Ascension series, caught up with that one, and I've read the first one in another series by him, although I wasn't quite as impressed by that. I do think that this series is definitely where he starts to get really good at writing, and you can tell he's progressed a lot from his previous series, which I don't think was as strong. But this one has a lot of likeable elements to it. It has a main character who I think is very easy to get behind. He's got good motivations, and although he does irritating things because he is a teenager, it still feels like a very fresh, fun book throughout. I think the second book I didn't get quite as wowed by, but I still really enjoyed, so I'm hopeful that the third book will be really impressive when that comes out. I definitely think the magic system in this is very interesting, and the way the world is set up with different spires that you can climb and you can acquire more powers if you beat all the monsters is very D&D-esque, and I think there's a lot of good sort of fantasy role-playing game inspiration. Lit RPG is definitely a term that has been applied to this book quite often, and I really like that. It's my first kind of lit RPG book, and it's one that I read right at the start of the year, yet this author is still one that I continue to really enjoy, and I hope that I will see more books coming out in this series soon from him, because I definitely want to know what happens next. Another author I only recently discovered, although she has been writing for a long time, is SHERIS TEPPER. This is Grass, and I also read Raising the Stones by her. I really enjoyed both of them. I particularly think this one I really found fascinating. It's a long read and it's quite dense at times, but I found the world very immersive. Culture and the population, the way that they've evolved over time to kind of deal with what their world is like, is very fascinating, and I just think that there's a lot to like in this. So for me, she's an author I definitely want to explore more of and go and read more of her backlist. I know she's got quite a lot of books. I think there's another one in this series in particular, and then I think there's quite a few other series that she's written. I don't know if they're in the same universe, or if not, probably not, but let me know if you know any more about her and where to go next once I finish this series, which I think is called the R series. So I would love your thoughts on that. Another author I just discovered in 2018, although I feel like I've read a lot of his books in 2018, is Rob J. Hayes. I read this one first, Where Loyalties Lie, because it was an SBFBO finalist for last year. Really enjoyed it, completely, thoroughly, utterly enjoyable read. It's a sort of sword and sorcery, pirate-esque story. It's got a light-hearted theme throughout it, but it does have bloodthirsty moments, as pirating books should. And I think all of his books have that really fun undertone to them. So far, at least, I've read about 6 or something maybe of his, and I've really enjoyed all of them. I'm currently reading one right now, and they're all just very light-hearted, don't take themselves too seriously, but actually are very fun reads and have a lot of good story time and moments with the characters too. So I thoroughly recommend Rob J. Hayes, and I've really enjoyed kind of getting to know his backlist this year, and hopefully I'll continue to read the others next year and find out more about what they are and what series he's opening up, because he seems to be a bit of a writing machine and have a lot going on at once. So very excited to read more of his works as 2019 continues. Next up, I have City of Lies by Sam Hawke. Sam Hawke is an author who I didn't know anything about until I saw this book kind of getting hyped up, and I decided, you know what, I'm just going to read it. I believe she's a female author, and I was very intrigued because I like epic fantasy by female authors, and this was no exception. This book was really fun. I think it's her debut, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure it is, and it was just really enjoyable from start to finish. I found this on audio and I picked it up and I read it in about 2 or 3 days maybe. I just completely whizzed through it and found it so fun, and I'm very excited to see what happens in the book next that she brings out. I think it'll be the sequel to this, so hopefully I can continue to follow her as she develops as a writer. She seems like she's already pretty great, so I'm hopeful that I'll enjoy the rest of the series as much as I did with this one. Another author that I've only really read this year is Stephen Fry. I've read a lot of books that are narrated by him on audio, so I know him, I'm fairly familiar with him, I've seen him on TV and all sorts of stuff, but I've never actually read one of his books until this year, and then in fact I read 2 of his books. I read Mythos and I read Heroes, both of which are non-fiction. They're both all to do with sort of Greek gods and mythology, and I really enjoyed them. I think he had a very sarcastic, funny, light-hearted tone. He kind of brought the stories to life very well. He's quite good at acting out that sort of voice narration, I suppose, and he does that really well on the audiobooks, but particularly just the way he writes is fun, it's enjoyable, brings these stories that are very ancient and might be a little bit hard to reconcile in today's world actually to life, and makes you think about them and just find how they connect to each other, and it's really good. So I really enjoyed that. I might have to pick up some more books by him, especially if he does more in this sort of vein of like talking about the Greek mythology. I love Greek mythology, I love Roman mythology, so I'm generally just interested in mythology, and if he does other books like that, I'll certainly pick them up. If you've got other recommendations of his, please do let me know. I'm not sure I'm that interested in sort of biography stuff, but if there's other things that he's done that you think I should read, do let me know. Another author I'm super pleased to have discovered this year is Keith Ward. This author is the author of The Anointed. That's the only book of his I've read so far, but it was my winner for SBFBO. It's the one that I put forward as my finalist from my batch because I really enjoyed it. I thought the world was very original, and I thought he had a great way with words and just felt like he knew the world very well as he was describing and telling you the story. So I found that fantastic and I just enjoyed it. I think he's got a couple of other books set in the same world, and then I'm not sure if he's got any others that are in different worlds, but I'm definitely going to read the ones in this world as well, and obviously continue the series as it goes on. There's lots to come from the sounds of it, so I'm super excited about that, and I will definitely be following him as time goes by. And then finally, my last author I want to mention is called Kat Howard. I discovered her very much by chance when I picked up a book purely based on the cover and just hadn't really heard anything much about her. Since then, I've completely fallen in love with that particular book. I've not read anything else by her yet, but I happen to know she's got a short story collection coming out next year, which I plan to buy and read, hopefully. So definitely one I want to continue to follow and sort of just involve myself in her journey, because I really like that one. So again, if you've other books by her that you recommend I read, especially backlist ones, do let me know. But I think I'll probably pick up her short story collection when that comes out, because I think it's early next year. So that is everything for my new to me author video. As you can see, I discovered loads of new authors, which is great, and I'm sure you guys did too, so do let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.